Hey, welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. We're very, very pleased and proud to be part of the Variety Sports Network, and we'd like to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. And apparently everybody has plans tonight because no one's here. This is the first time in forever. Oh, wait, somebody just showed up. Thank God. We have one. Somebody's here. Some hard up soul like the three of us. In any case, Mr. Ben Anderson will not be available tonight. He has put his personal life ahead of this. He will be fined by the SCB Human Resources Council. He knows that ahead of time, and he is willing to pay the price for that. Ellie Finnerty may join us coming up. We're not sure. We believe that she had late dinner plans down in Florida and may come on anyway. She's been pretty stoked lately about the Steelers. She's been on fire on the Twitter sphere. So I'm sure she'll have some things. But in the meantime, we are here with me and Ian and Scarps, and don't you worry, we've got plenty to talk about.
Do we? Did anything happen this week?
Well, let's go back to Thursday. I'll tell you what. First of all, who's the guy that tweeted? And welcome in, Dennis. You are number one. Great job. Appreciate you having here. Who was it? Former NFL player Barrett Sally tweeted out that during the Steelers-Browns game that's not football weather. He said football weather is like 65 and blah, blah, blah. Wrong. That is the weather you dream of as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
It just is that first snowfall. You get together with your buddies and you're playing football in the snow. The snow's in your face. Again, if that was anybody else but the Steelers, I would have thoroughly enjoyed that game a lot more. But unfortunately, because it was the Steelers and because of the ultimate outcome, it kind of sucked. But hey, Tom, welcome in. Scarps, was that one of Mike Tomlin's poorer games as a head football coach?
Yes. Everybody just thinks I'm negative and I'm a hater, but
I think you're going to have a little company with this. So go ahead.
So before I said anything about it, I went back and looked, and the last 5 times Mike Tomlin was a 3-point favorite or greater on the road against a team that was 6 or more games under 500. He is 2-3.
Wow.
And Cleveland, 2 games with Cincinnati, 1 against the Raiders. I can't remember who the other one was. I apologize because I looked this up. I looked this up last week. But that whole the Jaguars. Sorry, yes, that was the other one. And he had in his 2 wins. One was against the Bengals and 1 was against the Jaguars, but the other 3 were a loss to the Bengals with Ryan Finley, that Thursday night loss, and then that game in Oakland with the broken X-ray machine, where they were 10.5-point favorites and lost. So before I said anything, I went back and looked it up just so because anytime you criticize Mike Tomlin, the Tomlin apologists come out of everywhere. And even though I've defended Mike Tomlin a lot longer than most, but to me, you saw sort of the worst of Mike Tomlin all in one game. He loses to an opponent who is terrible. They're not good. Now, George Pickens shouldn't say that. I can. But,
right.
For the whole, they're on a short week. Hey, they played in New Orleans last Sunday at 1:00 and got their asses kicked. Yep. And they came home, and their season's over with. They're not going to make the playoffs. Kevin Stefanski's fighting for his life. But as I said on the show last week, they're still professionals.
Yep.
And getting back to Mike Tomlin, he wasted time on the clock. He didn't take timeouts. He doesn't take them timely. And a lot of people on Twitter were defending him. They're like, well, they're like, well, what do you want him to do? The Browns wanted him to take a timeout there. I'm like, yeah, I want as much time on the clock as possible before the end of this half because we're going to need to get points here because this game is going to get fucking weird. And it did.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah.
And
Just real quick, Scarps, I learned this as a player and then when I was coaching, you cannot put time back on the clock.
Unless there's the official has, unless the official says that, hey, the clock operator was incorrect, add some time, but you're right. You're right.
You can't put that 35 seconds back on the clock that he let go off.
And to me, that is that the defense of Mike Tomlin in that situation is a perfect example of you cannot criticize Mike Tomlin. That dude's been at this for 17 years now.
Yep.
And he repeatedly fails in these moments. And he's repeatedly failed for years now. And when he's asked about, a clock management or he's asked about a replay assistant or whatever, he scoffs at it like he's too good for it or whatever. And a couple weeks ago, I tweeted about this, and someone was disagreeing with me, which is fine.
Yeah.
But he was talking about I want facts, I don't want anecdotes, and it's like, well, okay, overall he's decent at challenges, but since 2017, and I hope you understand why I'm saying 2017 because it's the last time we won a playoff game. Mike Tomlin's challenges have declined significantly. He's only winning challenges at a 25% clip, 25 to 28%, something like that. And the league average is 40%. And he doesn't know when to challenge. He doesn't know when to challenge. He challenges things that aren't even challengeable. And the biggest thing to me is he leaves timeouts out there for no reason. And I just don't understand that. When you've and I'm not saying that the best coaches of all time haven't, don't make mistakes. They do it all the time.
Yep.
But he just does things that are just so bizarre to me. And when you bring them up, fans are like, oh, no, he knows what he's doing. Does he? Does he? When does that benefit of the doubt run out?
Good question. Ian, I'm going to let you piggyback on that, but then I think you'll also probably point out a few other areas in this game where Mike Tomlin may have not done well.
Yeah, well, for starters, I'll just say, Roy Williams, longtime coach at North Carolina, took a lot of timeouts to the locker room with him, including in a couple national championship games that he lost. So,
it happens to the best.
Ian's a Duke fan. Just saying.
Yes,
Ian is a Duke fan. Yes, Ian is a Duke fan. So this is known. But no, there just the whole scheme of the game. You could tell Cleveland was selling out to stop Najee Harris anytime he was in the game, and the fact that we couldn't, and maybe I'm getting away from Tomlin just talking more about the team, but the fact that we couldn't pick up 1 yard on third or fourth down in multiple situations with your starting center Frazier was back. The line was more or less who your starters are now because James Daniels is out for the season, but they tried the Justin Fields thing, and you knew Cleveland was going to sell out to stop him, but they didn't seem to have any other ideas until late in the game of, what if we let Justin Fields throw deep on 3rd and 1? Well, that didn't work either. And so it was just, it seemed like they were reacting instead of being proactive, that this game felt like they didn't really have a whole lot of ideas coming in, and then they're just like, we're just going to run our stuff and it'll be good enough. And then when it wasn't, they're like, oh, well, we got to do something different. But it was entirely predictable as far as what was happening and what was going to happen. It was really frustrating to watch. Ryan hit the nail on the head with all the stuff about the time on the clock, but also, when you're out there and you see them stuffing the box, it's like, okay, maybe we need to go play action and throw deep a little bit here. And then Russ did throw deep a couple times and had success. He hit a touchdown. He hit a couple other long passes. And it was just like there was no even the halftime interview when they asked Tomlin about Myles Garrett, he basically said, "We have no plan to stop him."
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know, if you game plan for one guy, game plan for that guy. And it wasn't like the things that went wrong in this game weren't predictable. You knew this was basically the Browns Super Bowl, that they
Yep.
were going to come out with a ton of emotion and we would have to match their intensity.
Yep.
You knew the weather was going to be bad. It was okay-ish in the first half, and then it got horrible in the second half. But anyone with the Weather Channel app could have known that the weather was going to get shitty, right?
And they'd been talking about it all week.
They've been talking about it all week, right? So field conditions, weather conditions, trotting Boswell out to try a 57, 58 yarder, like in Boz's defense, though, Russ cannot take that sack. You cannot take that sack in 3rd down and like 2 and turn it into 3rd and 12 and give your kicker in those conditions a much longer kick.
Agreed.
And the back angle of that kick, it was going straight, and then the wind just took it to the side. Like, there was just so much frustrating stuff with this game. It just, I think overall felt like they were a team that had no ideas and were just reacting to what was happening around them.
Well, I look at that first half timeout. I look at the decision to let Boz kick a 57-yarder in those conditions. I didn't understand that at all. And look, I think we all, especially this season, have tremendous faith in Chris Boswell. I think many of us think he could kick a 40-yarder into a Category 5 hurricane. But the fact of the matter was he was setting himself up, plus giving them good field position. The 3rd and 4 play in which Fields, who hasn't thrown the ball at all, you have him throw deep when you're trying to kill clock. And then here's one that I don't know was talked about enough. Should they have just let Cleveland score rather than burn a timeout and then you give up the touchdown anyway? Now we're behind. We need a touchdown and we're one less timeout. And I know Mike Tomlin pretty well, and I know his thinking. He probably didn't want to go down that road of letting a team score, but sometimes you got to play the numbers a little bit, and I don't know that they thought about doing that. Maybe they did. He wasn't asked about it today. I just watched the presser a little while ago, just to make sure I was up to date, and he didn't get asked about that. But for me, it was just one of those boner games that he has, it seems, every year or two. Yes, I'm using the word boner. Scarps.
Here's a guy who's on mute.
This is my first time ever on Zoom, or whatever we use. Are we going to talk about Fields or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I want to make one more point about Tomlin and going back to the Boswell decision. Again, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, and I totally get that. And believe me, I have been critical of him about living in his fears. But I look at it is situation by situation. And when I talk about when he punted down 11 to the Browns in that home playoff game, that's what I'm talking about, living in your fears.
Agreed. If
he punted instead of sending out Boz there, I would have been like, I would have said that's the right call. And the reason I say that is because Mike Tomlin's been at this since 2007. He has played in Cleveland once every year.
Yes.
And he has played there probably every month. Every month of the football season.
Yep.
And he knows how that wind picks up, and he knows how the weather can change. So for him to go out there, and I understand he has faith in Boz, I think we all do, but as we've seen, even guys like Justin Tucker are having a different year. McPherson for Cincinnati's having a tough year. Like, it just happens. And I'm not blaming Boz for that. I'm blaming the head coach for sending him out for that, because Mike Tomlin, and this is what I got to see Mike. I've seen a side of Mike that nobody's ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And if he would actually show that side during his media interviews, people would like him more. And that's why the national media like him, because in those interviews, he's totally different than he is to the local guys.
Yeah.
Because what happens is in his press conferences with the local people, he acts like he's the smartest person in the room, and he acts like he knows everything and he's better. And I don't think he truly thinks that. I just the way it comes across, and optics is everything.
Yeah.
But you can't. I don't know. You can't send out balls in that situation.
No,
man. It's so stupid.
To me, it reeked a little bit of arrogance. Like, okay, we missed the field goal. They get good field position. My defense will take care of it.
And Ian's right. Russ is taking bad sacks, and we'll talk probably talk about that soon.
Yeah. As far as the quarterback situation, again, as we've discussed on this show, we all have differing opinions on it, ranging from no, don't put Fields in period to yeah, I'm good with it. And I thought what they did the other night was just bizarre. I don't think it felt like there was no rhyme or reason to it. And the Fields looked like twice that I could see made two bad reads. And I don't necessarily blame Justin Fields for that, because Cleveland, number one, was bringing the house, and it makes it more difficult to get your read. But number two, he's been standing on the sidelines. He's freezing his ass off. He hasn't had real game situation. And then the ultimate was having him throw a ball. He hasn't thrown the ball the whole game. The last time he threw it was probably in warm-ups 3 hours before, and boom. Now you're going to ask him to make a pass like that in that kind of situation. That was asking a lot. Ian, where are you currently on the back and forth with Fields and Wilson?
I'm in the same place I was last week, that I'm still fine with it in spot situations, but you have to have options for Fields. He has to have the ability to audible out of things. If they're bringing 8-9 guys up to the line of scrimmage before the ball's even snapped and selling out to stop the run because they don't think he can throw the ball, you've got to have the ability for him to audible into something else. You can't just call the play and go up and run it.
And if I can interrupt you, he was asked that specifically in the presser today, and he said, no, it was, you got the left side or the right side, take your pick. That's what it was.
Yeah. And that's a problem, right? Yep. And that's the same problem we had with Matt Canada, was that he didn't let his quarterbacks audible. They had to just go out and run the play that he called, regardless of what the defense was. And that's been the big difference with Russ in there, is you see Russ in command of the offense out there. He's calling things out. He's calling audibles. He's moving protection around. You see him pre-snap directing things. And I think that's the bigger issue. That if you're going to put Fields in there, you got to give him the ability, if he sees something that he doesn't like, to change it and not just be like, well, they're got 10 guys in the box here and one high safety. I can't audible to a quick pass play or a screen pass or there's you got to have something else in.
Yes,
there,
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And I'll say one other thing too. I don't remember if I tweeted it or mentioned it in our chat that at some point when they put Fields in, they had to let him throw the ball, because the Browns were just selling out to stop the run, and everyone was going to do that if they didn't, if they didn't let him throw. Now, would I have chosen the situation of a third down in the fourth quarter for that to happen? No, I would have picked like a play in the second quarter or something like that was, do it on like a second, like if you get a 2nd and 3 situation in the second or third quarter, like that's the time to do it, right?
Play action, roll him out,
another down afterwards if it gets screwed up, like it's not the end of the world. And then, but that's what I mean about being reactive, right? That they were just like, oh yeah, maybe we should maybe we should let them throw the ball here because they're going to sell out to stop the run. But it's so frustrating.
And I think Claude hit on a good point too, that it seemed like we could not match their intensity. And to your point, Ian, it was the Browns Super Bowl. Playing at home, they had a great crowd. Credit to their crowd. They did not give up many tickets to Steelers fans. The way we've seen it in other stadiums. That team was 2-8, had nothing going for them, and they showed up. So kudos to them. Scarps, are you still 100%? You just don't want to see the switch of the quarterbacks at this point?
Yeah. And obviously I need to see more than just the other night, but
Yeah.
To me, I have a lot of concerns. Number one is that they don't know how to use Fields. Number two is it completely messed up the flow of the game. Fields played 7 snaps. His first snap, they got a false start on Darnell Washington. And obviously Russ came back in the next play and got a first down. That's great.
Yeah.
But Fields is like -2. He had a 30-yard run on a play in the snow where 2 defenders collided with one another, and then he threw a deep shot to Pickens that was way out of bounds that was nullified by a roughing the passer penalty.
Yeah.
And then he throws it on 3rd and 4 to Pickens. Now, the overall thing to me is that once again, this offense is way too predictable. It is. Hi, Vinny.
Yeah,
Bobcat.
Vinny. I pointed to that.
He's a bobcat. What do you expect?
Well,
what
yeah,
I mean?
now here's a guy.
But
yeah.
we're way too predictable, man. And
Yep.
I guess I can get into my Arthur Smith thing tonight. And I said this. I thought Arthur Smith was a safe hire. I said that he was going to be frustrating as hell. Because it's my 3 years in Atlanta playing fantasy football, you draft an Atlanta Falcons player and you're like, man, this is going to be a great year. And he literally takes them out in key moments. Yep. He's taking out Bijan Robinson for Tyler Allgeier. And it's like, what are you doing, man? And we're starting to see that. We're starting to see that here. We run on first down all the time. Yep. It's either like it's moon ball or deep shot or a check down. There's last week everyone was like, well, he threw some seams to Darnell Washington. It's like, I need a little bit of less of Darnell Washington and a little more of the $50 million tight end that you paid before the season, right? And getting back to the we match their intensity. I kind of disagree with that, and the reason I do is because we had plenty of chances, and I think we did capitalize to a certain extent. Our defense made a couple plays, but Jameis Winston was just picking wherever he wanted to throw the ball. Like
he was making a salad back in the pocket.
Jerry Jeudy, and then Cedric Tillman went out of the game. I'm like, okay, we might have a chance now. And literally, he's throwing.
Blake Whiteheart making
it.
Yeah. Jordan Atkins. Like, who the fuck are these guys making these
Jordan
catches?
Akins, fucking Njoku was dropping balls. Like our defense is not. I'm going to say this again because I've been saying it for weeks. Where's Matt Smith? Matt Smith, you watching? You going to give me some shit tonight? Because I need it. It's Thanksgiving week. I'm thankful for you, Matt Smith. This defense is not as good as people say it is. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Jameis Winston didn't have the best quarterback rating, but that dude was picking and choosing his spots all night, even in the snow.
And he made plays at important times. He did. And more power to him. What was I looking at here in the chat? There was,
our chat is great. Our fans are the best.
They are. Thank you for showing up.
Where else would you rather be on a Tuesday night?
That's right. Especially a Thanksgiving week when you all could be getting prepared for something like that. The holiday. Arthur Smith, the fade to Cordero Patterson. Come on.
Don't steal Casey's thunder.
Sorry,
no,
man.
I'm just kidding.
Sorry. It's just like sometimes these guys, and I say this every single year in the show about offensive coordinators, sometimes these guys way overthink things. They want to try to get cute. They want to try to get, fancy to be able to say to the news and to the fans, oh, well, we came up with this and it worked. And see, come on. I mean, you got Pickens. I mean, what about Mike Williams? How about a fade to him in the corner? I mean, it just drives me insane. Absolutely insane.
He loves Cordero Patterson.
Yes.
Just, Arthur Smith has the biggest boner for Cordero Patterson. It's like every time he's on the field, he touches the ball, or or they try and get him the ball or something.
And I like Cordero Patterson if he's getting the ball running north and south. That's pretty much
Yeah.
all I like right now. I mean, they ran the end around to him. I don't think he's 100%. He does not look like he's moving nearly as well as he was at the beginning of the year. But be that as it may, I don't disagree with you, Ian. I think Smith just gets giddy every time he's on the field. Scarps.
Yeah, this might offend some people, and I don't mean any ill will about what I'm about to say, but there are several players on offense that shouldn't even be on this team, and it's just the way it is. I think Cordell Patterson is one of them. I don't see a lot of value in him, and I'm sure he's a nice teammate, and I'm sure he's a nice dude. And yes, he was once a lethal return guy that has return touchdowns that puts him up in the high regard and some of the highest ranks of all time. But Cordell Patterson's one of them. I don't want to keep naming names to offend people.
Well,
but
there was
it's like it is what it is, and people want to sit there and say, oh, the con artist and this and that. Hey, he's responsible for building this roster, and this roster is underwhelming. And you know what? You trade for a guy in Mike Williams who's supposed to stand opposite, and when they signed Mike Williams, I said he's probably not going to get a hat for a couple games. People are like, oh, you're stupid, you're full of shit. Okay, well, he's gotten a hat. He caught that touchdown. Thank God he caught that touchdown with Washington. And by the way, Washington doesn't look that great.
Yeah, they've lost 3 in a row now.
Yeah,
but
the Cliff Kingsbury effect.
But yes, you said that. Yes. So again, getting back to Arthur Smith, he is frustrating as hell.
Yeah.
And literally the only time he was ever successful in this league was when he had arguably the best running back at his position. And he had A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, and Ryan Tannehill was decent, and he had a really good offensive line. He was not good at Atlanta, and I don't think he's doing great now. I don't think he's doing bad now. But really the results, and I started looking at these numbers. Najee Harris is under 4 yards a carry now.
He has the last 3 games. He's dropped off significantly.
Jalen Warren's at 4 a carry now. That's great, and this is exactly what it was in Atlanta. Steelers they got a top 5 rushing attack, middle of the road passing attack, and middle of the pack in points. That is exactly Arthur Smith in Atlanta. It's exactly what it is.
And to a degree, I think it's Mike Tomlin a little bit too. But I wanted to add one other item related to, and of course now I'm completely forgetting. Oh, I know what it was. There were some Steelers fans tweeting some video of the Lions against the Colts, and the Lions scored a couple of short touchdown runs rather easily. And, the quote was just simply, why can't we do this? Well, okay, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, offensive coordinator creativity and difference is massively stark there between the two. But also look at the personnel you're using. When we're talking Montgomery and Gibbs right now with what they're doing, that offensive line to a man is probably better than ours across the front. You can maybe make an argument for 1 or 2 guys, but at the end of the day, it is night and day between those 2 offenses right now. So I get the frustration that we can't get yards. I get the frustration that we don't do well down in the red zone or in the end inside the 5. But sometimes it's personnel too. Ian.
You're absolutely right, and this is the kind of game in this kind of weather, right? Like we talked about at the top of the show, this is football weather. This is the kind of game where a power back like Najee Harris should take it over and just dominate, and he did not. And some of that was on the offensive line. Some of it was on the predictability of the scheme and the plays that, every single first down, you knew they were running the ball. And it's like, can we please throw a pass on? Somebody said in the chat, like, can we pass on first down once? Like, you got to come out and mix it up a little bit to keep them on their toes. So, yeah, it's just like, but in that kind of weather, in that kind of game, that's where you need your running back to just dominate. And when you have a guy who's that big and strong, in theory, at the point of attack, he should be able to just grind things out for you. But this team is not a team that and I don't want to point to Jerome Bettis because he's, a Steelers legend and all that. But
yeah,
when we had Bettis and we had other guys, you got the ball back with 4 minutes left and you're like, all right, we're going to run the clock out. Like you knew we were going to grind out a few first downs and just be able to do it. This team cannot do that. If they, and they haven't been able to do it for a few years now.
Several.
Haven't been able to, in those clutch situations, whether it's grind out a first down, pick up a yard on a third or a fourth down. They just, I don't know. It seems like they fold in big moments, which is not encouraging.
It's like 4 or 5 guys do everything right, get good fits, but then there's one guy that doesn't. In those short yardage situations, and it just becomes a sieve. And a couple of the folks in the chat talking about predictability and boat raced against certain teams here. I titled the podcast tonight, "Is There Danger Ahead?" And the reason I did that is because on this show every game's important. And I think Mike Tomlin will be the first to tell you that. It doesn't matter if it's division or non-division. Every game's important. They all mean the same at the end of the day. But I look at these 2 games. We got the Bengals, and then we get the Browns again. If we go 0-2 in those games, there's going to be problems
with the Eagles and the Chiefs looming after that.
Exactly, and having to play at Baltimore. I'm not saying that these are quote unquote must win games. I don't like to use that term, but man, they really. To avoid some problems, they need to do some good things the next 2 weeks, Ryan.
Yeah, and of course, Steelers Nation was seeking comfort by saying, "Oh well, the Chiefs had trouble with the Panthers. See you on Christmas."
But it's the NFL. The Panthers playing the Chiefs, that was their Super Bowl, just like the Browns playing us was their
exactly. Super Bowl. And you know what? The Chiefs are 10-1.
They're sleepwalking right now, as far as I'm concerned.
Because if the Steelers were in the same boat as the Chiefs, Steelers fans would be like, "Oh, we're great. We know how to win games. We're great."
Right.
Anyway, getting back to Najee real quick, and I want to make this point was during that 3-game stretch where Najee had 3 straight 100-yard games against 3 horrible teams, the Raiders, the Jets, and the Giants. Everyone was like, we need to re-sign Najee. Go look at his game log in every other game since.
Yeah.
And that's great that he's feasting against these shitty teams. But listen, like you talked about the Lions. Go look at Montgomery and Gibbs every game this season, right? Go look at their rushing production every game this season.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, and I tweeted this, the Lions are better at every position on offense, and their coaches are better at every position.
And that translates.
And I'm not. Would you rather have Dan Campbell or Mike Tomlin as a head coach right now?
Ooh.
Because to me, I think both guys are pretty similar. Guys you want to play for.
Yeah.
Guys that are going to say the right thing.
That's true. So here's what I'll say though. We talk about a lot on this show about guys who have never won anything and all that, and I'm fully recognizing that on our preseason prediction show, I picked the Lions to win the Super Bowl this year. But Dan Campbell has not won anything yet. So
he hasn't.
Now he's got a good team with a lot of potential. I think he's a very good coach. I picked them to win the Super Bowl. So I obviously have some faith in them or belief, or I was just really drunk that night. But nevertheless, I think Mike Tomlin, having won a Super Bowl and been to another one, does carry some weight in this conversation.
I think Vinny hits on something, but also
when was that?
if you flipped the rosters, who would you have more faith in then? If Tomlin had to coach the Lions roster and vice versa.
I think the Lions have a better roster. Absolutely. Yeah. So I think,
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. You mean, are you
if
saying Steelers coaches and Lions coaches?
I'm saying if Mike Tomlin was in charge of the
just
Lions
the head
roster,
coach.
just the head coaches.
Yeah.
Well, Mike Tomlin would tell Ben Johnson, "Don't turn the ball over and
Right.
let our defense handle this."
Right. But I think
Here's a question though. Here's a question. If Dan Campbell had Mike Tomlin's defense right now, as opposed to if Mike Tomlin had Dan Campbell's defense.
I'm telling you what, Detroit's defense, they haven't given up a touchdown in the last 10 quarters?
And they've lost significant players.
Yeah. They've lost Hutchinson and they lost
they don't have a TJ Watt. They don't have a TJ Watt.
No. Which is a great segue into the TJ Watt discussion. I looked at some film this week and I am becoming more and more convinced. I think I know what's happening here. I do think it's a mix of Terrell Austin being more vanilla than Briars, and not getting a lot of help from Mike Tomlin in that area. But I also think the interior defensive line is not getting the push that they have in past years, and that's allowing offensive coordinators to peel that guard over to help on Watt, because there's no concern that anybody else can beat their guys one-on-one right now. And if you watch the tape a little bit, you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that's true of every play, and I'm not completely saying that TJ Watt isn't to blame at times, but my God, the guy is having to go up against a tight end, a tackle, a guard. Maybe it's a tackle, a chip from a running back. It's constant. It's just constant. And I don't know how that can't be a bit defeating at times when you know your path to the quarterback is going to be a bitch, And look, Myles Garrett completely outstatted him and outplayed him the other night. No denying it at all. I didn't see us do much to stop Myles Garrett other than put Dan Moore out there on an island. I think Freiermuth chipped once or twice. But be that as it may, we got to figure out a way to get TJ Watt going.
Mm-hmm. Well, and look what Cleveland did with Garrett too. They moved him around to different sides of the formation. They, ran him on some stunts to come around to come up the middle.
Yeah, he made Frazier look pretty silly on the one.
Yeah, he did. And they've even used him in the past, basically, standing right next to the nose tackle as an interior rusher. Like they move him around. Terrell Austin has zero. I mean, we talk about the offense having no creativity. Terrell Austin has zero creativity on defense.
He moved TJ 4 times in the Giants game, and Tomlin said today that was largely due to need because they were so short on OLB depth.
Yeah, because that was when both Highsmith and Herbig were hurt.
Yep.
So it's just you're right though, Mark. It's that like having to go through multiple layers of like you get chipped by a tight end, then you got to go through a tackle, then maybe there's a running back waiting behind it. And I think also TJ Watt, generally speaking, throughout his career, right? He's a cerebral player. He thinks the game very well. But he does things early in the game to set guys up for later in the game that he will do things early. Maybe it's, every time he's going to the outside like 5 times in a row. But then like he's setting them up for a big third down or a big play late in the game where he's like he fakes outside and then goes inside and is wide open to the quarterback because the tackle thinks he knows where he's going, right? So that's kind of the art rather than the science of pass rushing, right? That, you can have a good hand chop or you could have a good swim move or whatever moves you want, the science of it. But there's also the art of like kind of knowing and having a feel for what's going to work in what situation. And I think TJ does a lot of that, and that's why he makes all those impactful plays at those big moments in games, because he does things early in the game to set himself up for later in the game. But when you have to constantly go through that barrage of other guys, it wears on you. The other thing I'll mention, though, about TJ, you go back and watch that last Browns drive, they took TJ and I don't know if it was Hayward or Herbig. They took a couple of those guys out. Like the Browns picked up a first down early in the drive.
I know exactly where you're talking.
Took them out in the middle. I'm like, you guys are trying to stop them in the fourth quarter from scoring a go-ahead touchdown. Like, this is not the time to be rotating your defensive linemen and your pass rushers. Like,
I saw that too.
I understand guys get tired, but that's why you give them breaks earlier in the game. You can't put Jeremiah Moon in the fourth quarter and be like, oh yeah, it's fine. It'll totally be fine.
Sometimes I just think that's the arrogance, though. I think sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I don't know. There's so many things I want to say. And TJ Watt is all world, but you know what? Myles Garrett is too. And I'm not a Myles Garrett fan. They don't even play the same position. Yeah, Myles Garrett talked some shit after the game.
Yep.
But he also followed it up with, some factual information that TJ didn't attend the award ceremony, that Cam Hayward won Walter Payton Man of the Year. And to me, hey, that's kind of sour grapes, man. Like, why aren't you there to support Cam? Well,
do we? I don't want to get too far into it. Do we know why TJ wasn't there?
Well, he tweeted about nothing I'm not used to or whatever. So
okay, so he must have been somewhere other than where he could have been, which was at the awards.
Yeah, he could have. Yes.
Okay.
And then even JJ Watt. JJ Watt's on CBS now. He's doing all these things. JJ Watt was talking shit about Myles Garrett. So you know what? Hey, good for Myles. And you know what? Myles showed up and he was double teamed pretty much the entire game, and he still had 3 sacks. And guess what? Mike Tomlin at halftime was like, he pretty much was like, we're doing everything we can schematically.
He said the same thing in the presser today.
Again, that's nothing against TJ, man. And Myles is a great player. But all week on Steelers Twitter, it was, what has Myles ever won? Hey, Steelers Nation, look in the mirror. What has TJ ever won? Now, I'm not saying that's his fault. But I'm saying that, like, to me, the whole argument is just stupid because they don't play the same position.
Nope, it's a different spot.
And if you actually look at the numbers, Myles and TJ are like 1 and 2 in everything. Like it's like I'm not gonna shit on Myles, even though I don't like that. Yeah, he fucking swung a helmet at Mason Rudolph. Even if he swung a helmet, whoever he swung a helmet at, it was wrong. But like, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, and we're talking about them as players.
Yes, I'm just gonna sit here and say like, damn, when I was growing up, I got to see in the AFC Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Ben Roethlisberger battle it out every year. Yep. And as I get older, I get to see 2 of the premier edge rushers in this game who happen to play in the same division. Watch them, in all their glory, and they're both all world. And it's like, I don't know. I just think it's so fucking petty and stupid. Anyway, getting back to Terrell Austin. Sorry, I'm rambling, but get back to Terrell Austin. It's funny because the statistically, the 2 best defenses in football are the Minnesota Vikings and then the Steelers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you watch them, they do things so differently.
Yeah.
And the way Brian Flores gets different guys involved and moves people around, and they lost, like, Daniil Hunter plays for the Texans now. Like, it's not like they've lost guys throughout the years, and yet he's got these dudes just fucking playing, man, and they're getting turnovers, and they're getting sacks, they're getting pressures. So the Steelers statistically are probably the 2nd best defense in the NFL. But man, do they look so different. And to me, it's like that's great. That's great that they're 2nd in the NFL, but they let the wrong coordinator go. And that to me shows that I was stunned that they fired Canada before his contract ended. But like, to me, that was like a, we don't want to, like, we want to do right and let Terrell Austin finish his contract when, but at the end of the day, the rumor is that Mike calls the defense, so it doesn't matter who it is.
Or at the very least has a hell of a lot more input on that than he does the offense.
But damn, if you're okay, and hopefully we'll talk about this, but your best player on defense is TJ Watt. You need to move him around to get him involved.
Right.
And then probably your second best player, arguably, is your free safety, who you don't let make any plays. Like, you made him the third highest paid safety to be a glorified lifeguard. And I'm gonna die on this hill because he is not having a good season, and he didn't have a good game the other night.
He was asked about it today, and he made the comment that I've heard a million times over, and I was kind of surprised by it, but I think he just is annoyed and doesn't want to talk about it. And he basically said, well, they're just not throwing in his direction. That's why you get good players so they don't throw there. There's some truth to that.
Ian, go ahead. Let
there's
Ian
also
because I did some research.
No, you go.
Can
go
I?
for it, Ryan?
All
Yeah,
right,
go.
Sorry,
go.
I don't mean
It's
to
all
be
good.
Ben. I don't mean to be hi Ben.
No.
If you're listening, but
You're good. Go.
So the whole notion that they're not throwing his way is false. It is false. It is fucking false. This isn't Pro Football Focus here. This is Pro Football Reference. This is a credible source, one of the most credible sources. The only other credible source you could get that's better than Pro Football Reference, in my opinion, is if you sat down with the Steelers coaches and they logged all these things. Since the start of the 2023 season, this doesn't include last week's games, though.
Okay.
Minka has been targeted 66 times. He has 0 picks and 5 passes defensed.
Do you know how many receptions he's given up in that time?
So I didn't want to use that number because there is definitely some subjectivity when it comes to safety play.
For sure.
But I just want to talk about targets, okay? Because he's
yeah, and that's fair.
So let's look at some guys that have similar targets, okay? Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, he's like 800 years old. He has been targeted 69 times over the past 2 seasons, and he has 7 interceptions, 15 passes defensed, and interception return for a touchdown. Now, here's a guy that has better numbers than Minka and is on a rookie contract, Javon Holland from the Dolphins.
Oh, yeah.
He's been targeted 64 times. He has 1 interception and 6 pass breakups.
Okay.
And here's the thing about it. Minka is the 3rd highest paid safety in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Tyrann Mathieu's 24th, and Javon Holland's on a rookie deal, so he's like in the 55th or something like that. So if you're going to pay your free safety $18.2 million a year, and you say, hey, man, we know like you're a ball hawk, but like, how about you just stay back here and keep a lid on it?
That feels more like what it is.
And I've been critical of him. I think that's totally unfair to him. That's totally unfair. And I get that's what we're trying to do. Keep a lid on it. Don't give up the big play.
Right.
But that is not going to win you games. That is not going to win you games. And I'm telling you right now, I'm feeling good about this. I'm telling you right now, there's going to be plenty of deep shots this Sunday.
Yes, he's going to be very busy on Sunday. Yeah, he's going to be covering sideline to sideline big time.
And the way they've schemed him the last few weeks, and going back to the Ravens game, we talked about it on the show that, when Mark Andrews was on the field, Minka was covering Mark Andrews one-on-one. And that's size-wise, not a good matchup. Skill-wise, Mark Andrews, even though he's old, is still very good.
Mm-hmm.
And Andrews did have some success in those one-on-one matches.
I would argue that Lamar threw some really good balls too. They were balls that only Andrews was going to catch.
Yeah. Now, in this game, they had Minka one-on-one with a couple tight ends who are no-name guys, and
Yeah.
those guys still caught the ball.
Yeah.
Now, maybe at some point you got to look at maybe matching Minka up one-on-one with tight ends isn't the best way to use him on the field. Maybe you want a more physical safety or a guy with more size than him or something. It just doesn't, I don't know. It doesn't seem like, it seems like they're trying to run defenses that don't maximize the skill sets of their players. And this is something we talk a lot about on offense,
Mhm.
that you want to run offenses that, put your guys not only in situations to win, but in situations that maximize their skill sets, not, trying to fit square pegs into round holes. But it feels like that's a little bit of what they're trying to do on defense.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, we need a guy that can just play over the top and keep a lid on things and not give up big plays, because we believe at some point our defense will make a play and a team won't be able to get the ball, the whole way down the field against us. Okay. I don't necessarily agree with that logic, but
Right.
I objectively can understand it. But at some point, all right, so Ryan, you have a really good memory. You and I are like the Rain Men of this show.
Wapner,
back
Wapner
to-
on 7:30. Wapner.
Yeah. All right, go back to 2019, the year of, Ben's injury, Duck Hodges, all that, right?
Yep.
You remember the interception Minka made against the Rams on the goal line?
I thought that was a fumble return.
No, there was an interception.
My bad. You're okay.
Yeah, he scored on a fumble return for a touchdown in that game, but he made an interception in the end zone.
Okay.
It was on a drag route to Cooper Kupp that he came across the field and picked it off.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I know
Yes.
the play you're
Okay.
talking now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he said after the game about that play? He said, "I saw it on film study, so I knew what they were going to do." They'd only, and like someone on Twitter, because you can find anything on Twitter, right? Someone on Twitter actually looked back at like all the Rams plays and was like, they ran that play once in week 3, and that was in like week 12. Like they hadn't run that play in 9 weeks, and Minka was like, I knew what they were going to do when they lined up. But like, so he's obviously a smart guy. He obviously watches film. He obviously like has a good knack for, tendencies and knowing what to do, but also, he's a player. He's performing his assignment. So yes, I completely agree. We need more from him, but you also have to ask, are the coaches putting him in position to maximize his skill sets, or are they just being like, hey, keep a lid on things, make sure no one beats us over the top, or no long touchdowns?
That's what it feels like to me right now. Yeah. Oh, he's a super smart guy.
And Ryan,
I
who was
just-
the defensive coordinator in 2019?
Keith Butler.
Yeah.
No, he's.
I
Yeah.
just, and again, like, I'm not saying the guy's a terrible player, but like,
Oh no.
if you look at all the all-time great defensive backs, like, they made fucking play. Like they made plays. Like Minka's gone. Was it 22 straight games now without a pick or forcing a turnover?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the longest drought Troy Polamalu ever had. And I know they played different positions, but the longest drought Troy Polamalu ever had was 10 games. And that's
incredible.
It is
10 games.
It is.
Like that's, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, but in the scope of like a league where like getting 5 interceptions is a lot in a season.
It's yes, I have to go back because Minka did actually force a fumble the other night. It didn't get recovered, but he forced a fumble.
Yeah.
But so Troy forcing a fumble didn't necessarily mean it was a turnover. But the point is, the longest Troy went without filling a box score was 10 games, and
Troy was amazing.
And Minka, 21 games or whatever. And yet, like, oh, it's not his like, and that's the thing that frustrates me the most about it is fans are like, oh, it's not his fault. Every year it's another player. It's not his fault. It's not. Listen, like you got to show up and play, like, because I'm gonna tell you this right now, like if okay, and whether you like them or not, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen see Minka Fitzpatrick fucking just keeping a lid on it, they're going to pick us apart, man. Jalen Hurts is going to do the same thing, and Joe Burrow is probably going to do it on Sunday. And, like, this is, like, yes, do I think we're going to beat the Browns in 2 weeks at home? I hope so. But, like this is, like, this is – yes, there is danger ahead, Steel Dad.
Yeah, I think there is. I think there is for numerous reasons. I'll say this. Tomlin was almost giddy today in his conference when he was talking about a lot of their self-scouting, that they did. They always do it during their mini bye. They go through that period where they do a lot of that self-analysis, and he talked a lot about red zone offense and red zone defense, and he felt very much like it was just things that needed to be fixed, and feels pretty confident going forward. And I appreciate it, and I hope it translates to that. But just I think overall they need some definite changes to happen on especially offensively in the red zone, because man,
can I talk about that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I think the first couple games that Russ played, when they had something we haven't seen in years, which was multiple touchdown passes or touchdowns in the red zone, what they were doing to have success was based on timing, right? That it was, okay, we've got, Calvin Austin or Van Jefferson on a crosser or whoever it is at the goal line, right? That it's, or a fade to Pickens or whatever it is. It was all timing routes. Russ holding on to the ball in those situations, nothing good is going to happen in the red zone when you hold on to the ball for that long. They got to get back to, and part of it's scheme and part of it's timing, right? That you got to get the timing right, but you got to have plays designed to get guys open. If it's a 3-step drop slant route, like that's the easiest play in football, right? Because your quarterback's back foot hits the ground, the ball comes out, and the receiver just has to fake beat his guy. Same the old Chuck Nollism was same foot, same shoulder, right? But it's same idea, right? That it's you're stepping on the same cadence. You fake outside, you go inside 2 steps, the ball should be there. Like that kind of stuff is what they have to get back to in the red zone. You got to get back to Russ isn't a 6'5", 240-pound quarterback that can just see over his offensive line and shrug off defenders. We were so fortunate to have Ben Roethlisberger for so long. Russ is 5'11". He's not going to see over his offensive line. So you got to have,
and I do think that's part of it too. Part of some of the issues.
Yeah. You got to have plays that are designed to get guys open and timing with the receivers and the quarterback. And that's what it comes down to, is scheme and timing. If you're holding on to the ball, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah, yes, and it's a proven statistic right now with him, especially this year. If he's got the ball out in, what is it, like 2.5 seconds, it's usually a positive, and when he holds it longer than that, it almost
holds it longer
than
3 seconds, it's bad news.
In the negative. And those are the types of stats you can't run away from.
Mm-hmm.
They are what they are. So I don't know. I was mildly worried about the Ravens game. I was extremely worried about the Browns game. This week, everybody thinks we're going to have to score a ton of points, but we thought that going into the Baltimore game too, and that didn't end up that way. But this might be a completely different animal. I think Cincinnati's offensively, especially, is playing better. And they're coming off a bye week. I don't know. We got to score some points. We cannot kick field goals.
Here's what I'll say too about this is, everyone's bemoaning the fact of like, oh, the Steelers have to play a team coming off their bye, blah, blah, blah. Like, we kind of had a mini bye here too.
Yeah,
so I feel like that's kind of mitigated. That people bitching about the schedule. I'm like, guys, it is what it is. Like, we had to play like I was more mad we had to play a Thursday night game after playing the Ravens than playing Cincinnati coming off their bye week.
Well, and we've got the stretch of 3 games in 10 days coming.
Right.
Right. So people were bitching before. They're really going to bitch then, even though we've all known the schedule now since April.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Cincy's offense is playing better. Their defense is not good though.
It's not.
No,
it's not.
I mean, they've got some guys who can make plays, and you do have to scheme and worry about Trey Hendrickson as a pass rusher. He's got 11.5 sacks this year, so that's if there's one guy who could just wreck this game for us, it's Trey Hendrickson. But other than that, if they figure out a way to stop him, other than what they did against Myles Garrett, which doesn't work, then I do like our chances to be able to exploit their secondary, because their secondary is not good. But they've got explosive players on the outside. Higgins is really good. Chase is really good. I don't think this doesn't feel like a game like Baltimore where it's like, oh yeah, both defenses could just slow it down and turn it into a 18-16 game. This has much more the feel of a 35-31 kind of game.
Yeah, they are 28th overall in defense, and they're in the 20s in both against the run and the pass. If you can't score points against this defense, then the problems are greater than I think we maybe.
Kenny Pickett put up a ton of yards against this team last year,
now,
and then Mason Rudolph put up a ton of points against them.
Right. So I don't know. We're in over an hour. Scarps, what do you got for a prediction this week?
Say, open up a little Christmas beer.
Christmas beer.
I also have a Christmas beer. What do you have?
This is the Saranac Holiday Ensemble. This is the Black Forest Cake.
Jeez.
Ooh.
That sounds like a thick beer.
That's what she said.
I've got the Penn Brewery St. Nicholas Bock. And
yeah, those are good too. Those are good.
Yeah, I just can't do those thick ones.
The Bengals defense, I thought they'd be better, but they're not that great. They've been better against the run, though. They shut down Derrick Henry recently. But yeah, listen, whatever, again, I don't know what the hell what deal with Mike Tomlin made with the devil to fucking own the Ravens, but he's done it.
Right.
Joe Burrow throws a lot of touchdowns against this team. He also throws a lot of picks, but I think he's having an exceptional season. He doesn't have a lot of picks this year. He's throwing a lot of touchdowns. Obviously, Chase is a problem. Higgins is a problem, but they got some pretty good tight ends. Their offensive line isn't that great, but bottom line, like this team was letting Jameis Winston do whatever they wanted. I'm sorry. I got a bad feeling about this game. I had a bad feeling about last week's game. I said Myles Garrett was going to take over. He did. I said the Steelers were going to lose. They did. This is going to be blasphemy, but I'm going to say it. I got the Bengals 41-28.
Holy shit. 41 points. Wow. Okay. Ian, top that.
Ooh. The other thing we didn't talk about on the show was the overall playoff picture, where the Steelers now are a half game ahead of the Ravens in the division. They are 3 games ahead of the teams out of the playoff picture, basically, which feels like a comfortable lead. But we've got 2 games against the Bengals here. If we were to lose both of those, all of a sudden now the Bengals are only a game behind us in this race. So we said this was the Browns Super Bowl last week, which it absolutely was the Browns Super Bowl. but this is also probably the Bengals' last chance to get back in the playoff race. That if they lose this game, they're out. Their season's pretty much over.
Yes.
And Ryan mentioned earlier when we were talking about Minkah Fitzpatrick about, how Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen would just go after him and challenge him. And I got bad flashbacks to that game we got blown out in Buffalo where Josh Allen did exactly that of, I'm just going to go after Minkah and let my guys make plays. And Dante Jackson has had a pretty good year. He's been a little banged up. Joey Porter Jr. has been good at times, struggled at times, but neither of them are as good at their positions as the Bengals receivers are at their positions. And I'm just really worried that Jamar Chase is just going to absolutely take this game over. TJ Watt always seems to have good games against the Bengals. But I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about this going into Cincinnati. I'm not as much of a hater as Scarps, but I'm going to go, I'm going to go Bengals 31, Steelers 27.
It's a little bit of pressure on me here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've fought with this one all week. I keep going back to the Ravens game all week.
Yeah.
Every national publication, all the fans, oh my God, we're going to have to score 30. It's the only way we're going to have a chance. And it ends up 18-16. I think the Steelers defense will make it interesting. They'll keep it relatively lower because Joe Burrow can throw a few picks now and then. But ultimately, I think the Bengals win this 27-20. I don't have a lot of faith right now in our offense. I just don't. And I think if it goes this way, man, that game at home against Cleveland becomes a monster. Because if let's be honest, Eagles Chiefs is going to be a really tall task.
And at Baltimore.
Baltimore. I had to go with my gut, and that's what my gut is tonight. Anyway, Scarps, is Casey Kasem from the grave this evening?
Always.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Casey Kasem.
Casey's Coast to Coast, American Top 40. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week that was November 26, 1982. Our favorite correspondent, Ryan, is back with us again this week, and he writes, Dear Casey, people try to put us down just because we couldn't beat the Browns.
Oh, boy.
That game did look awful cold. Russell Wilson looks like he's 100 years old. Talking about my Steelers Nation. Casey, that's, of course, a parody of The Who's My Generation from their debut album of the same name. The song My Generation didn't succeed much in the United States and only went up to number 74 on the charts. But there's a bigger message here, Casey, about my generation, and that is we watched Kent Graham play quarterback for the Steelers, and our only outlet was to cry in our cars on the way home from Three Rivers Stadium. If only we could have logged on to Twitter to post, Kent Graham sucks, no cap, LMFAO, cry harder, hashtag here we go. Speaking of crying, that Browns game was painful to watch. Russell Wilson must have put some of his famous Kool-Aid in my cup because my eyes were playing tricks on me. You see, Casey, that first half was crystal clear, and then all of a sudden the field looked whiter than Ohio native Joe Walsh's dressing room during his The smoker you drink, the player you get tour. Casey, what I'm trying to say is the field looked like cocaine. Anyways, back to the game, where even Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles could see what plays Arthur Smith was about to call. Casey, Arthur Smith is better than Matt Canada, but that's like saying your sister's a better kisser than your cousin. He'll take a sip of beer after that. When Arthur Smith was hired, I told Yins that the way he uses players and when he uses them was going to be frustrating. For example, Cordero Patterson was the go-to target on a 2-point conversion. Casey, how many naked pictures does he have of Artie Smith on his phone? He's holding him for ransom. They gave Muth $50 million, and he averages less than 4 targets per game. There's no fluidity. It's just moonball or deep shot. They have to figure it out. The pressure is on. Well, Ryan, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. And keep your radio tuned right where it is. Staying at number 20 this week, here's Billy Joel with Pressure.
Oh,
Good call.
Nice.
Good call. I think Hank Williams Jr. had a song called "The Pressure Is On." I thought maybe that's where you were going, but I'm sure that never was in the top 40.
Yeah, I don't know if that made the Billboard.
I don't believe it did. Wow. Okay. Great
And
stuff
let's not
tonight.
forget that Vanilla Ice totally did not rip off Queen's riff from Under
Oh, no.
Pressure.
No,
definitely
not at all.
not.
That itty bitty ting.
Not at all.
Said.
Ian, I wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss Whippeal real quick before we
Oh
get
yeah,
out of here.
we had the high school football championships for the Western Pennsylvania Whippeal here this past weekend at Acrisure Stadium. So they will be resodding the field this week, and
Of course.
it will, now that Pitt is done as well, we'll probably have the Pittsburgh and Steelers in both end zones, which is always nice. And also, you can check out my Whippeal Blitz show, which we kind of merged with the Eastern PA show. So we did a full state semifinal preview. It's up on YouTube. Just search for Whippeal Blitz show. And then next Monday night, we will have a preview of the state championship games live on YouTube, just like we do here. Or, you can watch it anytime. So just check out the Whippeal Blitz show on YouTube. Search for it, find it. If you like high school football in Pennsylvania, we kind of merged it all now since we are in the state semifinals and the Whippeal championships have concluded. So check it out.
Yes, check it out at the site, along with all of our Steelers coverage, steelcityblitz.com. And check us out, of course, on the socials and all that other stuff. And yes, Aaron's already pumped up for the Ohio State-Michigan game. I'll watch maybe 5 minutes. I don't think it's going to go well for the Blue, but
Hey,
it's been
let's
a
end the
long
show on
time
a positive note. This is Thanksgiving week. What's one thing about the Steelers you're thankful for?
One thing about the Steelers you're thankful for?
Yeah.
You know what? I'll go. I already know. I am thankful that we have a fairly standard set of uniforms, and we are not changing our uniform every freaking week like we're an NBA team. That's what I'm thankful for.
I'm thankful for Chris Boswell. We would be nowhere without him.
True. No argument. Scarps?
Still, Dad, we disagree because I think this fucking team needs a little bit of flash every once in a while.
Here's a guy who wants to go back to the Bumblebees.
Nah, that was terrible. No, I'm thankful for a guy like Cam Hayward. He's always said the right things, always done the right things. He is the epitome of a Steeler, and ever since I left that team, I've wanted nothing more than that dude to fucking be a world champ one day. I mean, he's a world champ person, but it'd be great to see him be a world champ in football. And I don't know what's going to happen this season, and I don't know what's going to happen in his future. But if they decided to part ways after this year and he went to another team, I'd absolutely root for him there. He is all class, and I hope they win a Super Bowl for that guy.
Yeah, I would echo those sentiments for sure. Yeah. Hey, have a great Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll be back at our regular schedule Thursday next week, of course, after the Bengals game, and then to get ready for, the Browns coming into Pittsburgh the following week. And everybody have a very great Thanksgiving, a safe Thanksgiving, depending on where you are, where you're traveling and all that. And we will see you on the other side. And don't forget, go Steelers.
Ravens suck, I guess. They played pretty well.
They're actually pretty good, but yeah.
pretty good, but we also beat them. So
We have to keep up with appearances.
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
All right. Good night, everybody.